Anyone online that registered, Stephen?
We didn't have anyone register or submit comments in advance. So asked Teresa, did anybody raise their hand?
No? Okay, great. So moving to item 2, introductions and roll call. Do we have any alternates attending on behalf of their member today? Any alternates? No? Okay. Stephen, can we please do a roll call?
We can. I got to get back to my agenda here with my roll call sheets. Okay, we'll go again alphabetical by order. So for City of Banks, Mayor Kirk.
Here.
Thank you. City of Beaverton, Mayor Beatty.
She muted and unmuted so quick it didn't come through.
She's here.
Yeah. I see you. Thank you. Mayor Delane for Cornelius.
Present.
Thank you. City of Durham, Mayor Drake. We'll keep an eye out. For Forest Grove, I think we understood Mayor Wenzel wouldn't be able to attend today. And we'll keep an eye out for her alternate. City of Hillsborough, Mayor Pace.
Here.
Thank you. City of King City. We know that the mayor was unable to attend, but there may be an alternate.
We got an alternate.
Steve?
Steve here.
Great.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. And if you'd like to come up to the table, you're welcome to do that. We don't have a tag for you, unfortunately, but okay.
Okay.
Great. Thank you for being here. Let's see. For North Plains, Mayor Dumbro. All right, we'll keep an eye out. For Sherwood, we knew Mayor Rosner wouldn't be able to attend today. Is Council President Young of it online? We're in the room. Okay.
I don't see Kim. No.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye out. Okay, for Tigard, Mayor who?
Here.
Thank you. For Tualatin, Mayor Bubenik.
Here.
Thank you. For Wilsonville, Mayor O'Neill.
Here.
Thank you, sir. Washington County, Commissioner Fye.
I am present.
Thank you. For Metro, I see Councilor Rosenthal. Thank you.
Go.
Do we have Stephanie from ODOT? All right, we'll keep an eye out for her. And I think we knew that, is Dan Eisenbeiss online for Port of Portland? Okay, keep an eye out. And for TriMet, John Serra. Okay, keep an eye out for John as well.
Okay. Great, thank you very much. So we do have quorum?
We do have quorum.
Great. Moving to action items, item 3A, consideration of the WCCC meeting summary for January 12th. Are there any changes to the meeting minutes? Okay. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting summary for January 12th?
February 9th.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, February 9th. Yeah. Old notes. Sorry. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes for the last meeting, February 9th?
So moved.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Moving action item 3B as in Bravo, the TDT expenditure request from the City of Forest Grove. We're considering a $1.3 million TDT expenditure request from the City of Forest Grove for the intersection improvements at U Street and Adair Street, and at Highway 47 and Martin Road. And our presenter today is Diami Valentine. Thanks for coming up. Press the button when the light turns green. You are live.
Thank you. I actually have a different request before me for City of Sherwood.
Oh, okay.
That is reflected in the packet.
Beach, you got the right one. Beach, did your staff do you up? Is this your April
Staff's
Fool's?
doing great today. Yeah. And so am I. And that's okay. Where do you go? What do we got? Okay. To provide, so Diami's here to provide an overview of the TDD expenditure request for the City of Sherwood.
Okay,
Thank you.
All right, great.
All right.
I'm glad we're on the same page. Thank you, Vice Chair, members. Diami Valentine, Transportation Planning Section Manager. So the City of Sherwood, hopefully including your packet, has a request expenditure for 3 projects totaling $6.63 million. The 3 projects are described in the packet, includes Arrow Street, Langer Farms to Gerda. Their expenditure is $1.4 million for that. Includes design and construction of the project. $5 million towards Oregon Street project, and this is contributions and leveraging other funds. And then $230,000 for project, the Sunset and Timbrell intersection improvements, and the WCCC TAC reviewed and recommended approval of these requests at their March 5th meeting. And I believe staff is here if there are any questions regarding these specific projects. And with that, I'll leave it to you.
Do we have any questions for Diami? Okay, can I get a motion to approve the TDD expenditure request?
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor Delane.
Second.
Thank you. For the second, all those in favor? Aye. We get an aye?
Aye.
Commissioner Rosenthal, are you with us?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just spaced for a minute. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're good and you didn't
Actually, I
freeze.
don't know that I'm a voting member, am I?
He's not a voting member. Okay, good job. I was just testing you. You passed the
Caught me
test.
unawares.
You're doing an excellent job, Counselor. Moving to item 4, information and discussion. 4A, WCCC 101 overview. So we're treating this in-person meeting as our annual retreat style meeting where we'd like to talk about WCCC as a whole and what it means to be a WCCC member. And I'd like to introduce Stephen Roberts to provide us with an overview of WCCC, its history, bylaws, roles, and responsibilities. Take it away, Stephen.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, we try to do this once a year or so because we get new members rolling in periodically. So it's useful refresher, I think, for some members and especially for new folks. And if folks have questions along the way, feel free to raise your hand or just give me a shout out. I'm happy to try to field any questions along the way. So today, Teresa, go to the next slide for me, please. So we're really just going to cover, as the Vice Chair just said, the purpose of the committee, its roles and how it's comprised, a little bit of history, and then our role as county staff in staffing the committee. Next slide. So really the purpose of the committee, it's really meant to be a forum and a place for partnership between the county and all of our cities in the county. And its purpose, as established in the current bylaws that were approved by your committee back in 2021, are to review and comment on major land use and transportation issues, plans, and projects. And that can be county-wide projects, regional level, or statewide. And you see a variety of all of those different things in your different meetings here. Provides a forum for discussion that can result in coordinated countywide approaches when that's appropriate. Work to establish positions of consensus on land use and transportation issues that can carry forward then into regional and state discussions. Many of you serve on regional committees. So those include JPACT, the Policy Advisory Committee on Transportation, the Region 1 Act, which is ODOT's advisory committee to the Oregon Transportation Commission for the Region 1 area, which includes most of Washington County, Clackamas, Multnomah, and Hood River counties. And then MPAC, back to Metro, is the Metropolitan Policy Advisory Committee. So both JPAC and MPAC are advisory to Metro Council. Region 1 Act, as I mentioned, is advisory to the Oregon Transportation Commission. And then your committee has some specific board delegated roles and responsibilities in county programs, including the Major Streets Transportation Improvement Program, STIP, and the Transportation Development Tax, or TDT programs. And we'll look a little bit more at those on the next 2 slides. Next slide. So in the MSTIP program, your committee, the coordinating committee, is sort of the middle box of the 3 here. And you're supported by the Washington County Coordinating Committee Transportation Advisory Committee, the TAC. And so they have a role in helping the county to crowdsource potential MSTIP project candidates each cycle. They work on community engagement in conjunction with the county, work to explore different funding options if that's appropriate. And then ultimately, we all have a role in implementing any projects that are ultimately approved through the MSTIP process by the Board of Commissioners. So your role in here is reviewing those proposed MSTIP projects, providing recommendations to the Board of Commissioners on project selection, and then eventually, after funding has been authorized, your committee actually has final approval for the allocation of MSTIP opportunity funds, which we did TDT earlier, but you'll quite often see the MSTIP opportunity fund requests come to you too. And then your advisory as well to the Board of County Commissioners. And so again, the Commission's role is really considering a holistic view of all of the different county services that need to be provided, which includes transportation. They make countywide budget policy decisions, which includes transportation. And then specifically, they select MSTIP projects and funding allocations and authorize those to proceed. Next slide. So similarly, on the transportation development tax, which is a countywide system development charge for transportation that all jurisdictions assess on new development. Each jurisdiction basically collects and administers their own TDT funds, but your committee has the role and authority again of approving expenditure requests like the one we just saw from Sherwood. Your committee also provides recommendations to the Board of Commissioners on the project list because we update it typically once a year. There are projects that sometimes fall off the list because they've either been completed or may no longer be a jurisdiction's priority, or we're consistently adding new projects to the list as we identify new opportunities and new needs around the county. So again, you're supported by the TAC in this function. And so again, they crowdsource project list amendments for the TDT. They do the review of expenditures before they come to you just to help ensure that they're compliant with the TDT program rules. The TAC also reviews annual rate adjustment to the TDT, which is formulaic, but we always make sure to take a look at it with the full TAC and with your full committee. And then the TAC also, again, provides recommendations to your committee, the WCCC. And then after your committee does its thing on the TDT, again, the board adopts the countywide TDT ordinance, and then ultimately adopts project list amendments and then the annual rate adjustment that's part of that program. Next slide. So membership composition of the committee. So currently it's one member and one alternate are designated from each jurisdiction, and both the member and the alternate need to be elected officials. And then we have a group of non-voting ex officio members that are Metro, TriMet, the Port of Portland, and ODOT. And they each have one member and one alternate as well that are designated. Non-voting members, we don't require to be elected officials, but we consistently have our trustee staff liaisons here with us, so we appreciate that. Next slide. So quick history. So the committee itself was formed in 1982, and it was initially called the County Transportation Coordinating Committee, so the WCTCC. And it was initially established by the board. So the bylaws were adopted by the Board of Commissioners in 1982. The purpose was fairly similar, but more limited to transportation specifically, rather than land use and transportation. And at the time, the voting membership was really elected officials from Beaverton, Hillsborough, Tigard, Tualatin, and Washington County. And the non-voting members at that time were Metro, ODOT, and TriMet. The bylaws initially called for county and city JPAC representatives to be on the WCCC, and then other officers for the committee itself selected by the committee. And then at that time, it also established the staff level technical coordinating committee, so what we now know as the TAC. And my understanding was that this really came out of a group of ongoing conversations that have been happening amongst those 5 jurisdictions, really trying to understand countywide transportation needs. And going back in time, this is all pre-MSTIP and pre-TDT. So there were a lot of needs that were going unmet in the county. I know the county itself was having a really hard time just even providing minimum maintenance on our county road system. And I assume some of the cities were in a similar predicament. So there was really this identified need to really come together and try to work at the countywide level to try to identify ways that we could build out a functioning countywide system, come up with funds to help maintain and to build out that system. So that was really the genesis of the committee itself. Next slide. Sorry, next slide. Oh, there we are. Thank you. So in 1986 was the first bylaw amendment, and it expanded the voting membership to all cities in Washington County that were inside the Metro UGB and the city of Portland. And then the Port of Portland was added at that time as a non-voting member. And there was an interesting thing about the chair and vice chair. So the chair was designated specifically as the county's JPAC representative and the vice chair as the city's JPAC representative. And then the board at that time also approved this bylaw amendment and charged the committee as the steering committee for the countywide transportation system plan update that kicked off in 1986. And then again, as I mentioned earlier, really this committee played a key role in developing the first MSTIP levy, which evolved into more of an ongoing program, and also what was originally known as the traffic impact fee and now the transportation development tax. Next slide. So in 1989, the bylaws were updated and expanded the non-voting membership to include all the remaining cities in Washington County, but again, non-voting. It shifted the city of Portland at that time to a non-voting member. And then that was the first time the county director of land use and transportation was designated as the committee secretary. Next slide. So in 1994, there were a number of amendments. And so that was where the charge of this committee was really changed to include both land use and other related topics in addition to transportation. Pulled the transportation word out of the committee name, so it just became the WCCC. And then again, at that time, added the purpose of consensus building on both land use and transportation issues. Those bylaws really acknowledged formally the board delegated committee responsibilities and the MSTIP and traffic impact fee, or now TDT programs. Until before that, those things had been spelled out in those program rules, but not in the committee bylaws. So we wanted to make sure that those things all reference each other. And another weird, interesting change in officers was that there would be co-chairs, county representatives that serve on JPAC and IMPAC, and that the vice chair would be a city representative chosen within the committee. And at that time, there was also established a land use advisory committee, which is currently inactive. So we still have the transportation advisory committee, but not the land use committee. Next slide, 1995, thanks. So again, we shifted quickly back apparently to a single chair and vice chair that were elected annually by the committee itself. And then for some reason removed references to non-voting members, but all of the non-voting members continued participating during that time. And then we didn't really amend the bylaws again until 2021. So quite a long time there between those amendments. And so this most recent update, we identified and designated that both primary and alternate members that are voting members needed to be elected officials. There's a preference, but not a requirement, for the voting membership to include the representatives that serve on JPAC, IMPAC, or R1 Act. We revised the election terms for officers, so we now elect a chair and a vice chair in odd-numbered years, first meeting of an odd-numbered year. And then typically the assumption is that the vice chair will succeed the chair, but there is an affirmative vote of the committee that's required. And we've had situations where, for various reasons, both the chair and the vice chair may roll off because of term of office limits and that sort of thing. And so we do 2-year terms now, and elections are at that first committee meeting in odd-numbered years. So we had an off year this year, but next year we'll be looking to confirm our chair and vice chair appointments again next time. And lastly, the county role with WCCC. I know some new members have sometimes wondered why we're sitting at the table here, so to speak. And as I mentioned earlier, the county's land use and transportation director, which is currently me, is the committee secretary. So that means we're responsible for getting agendas out, meeting summaries, taking care of all the meeting setup, the tech, and et cetera. And so right now, those secretary duties are really divided amongst a few members of our department in land use and transportation. So myself, our policy analyst, Jessica, is really integral to getting all of this work done. Teresa in the back there, our senior administrative specialist, handles a lot of the meeting logistics for us. We appreciate that. And then typically we have an ITS county and IT system technician who supports our electronic meetings of the tech in the meetings. And today we were fortunate to have assist from City of Hillsborough. So thank you for that, Mayor. So yeah, so we do that as a group here, but that all kind of falls under that role of this providing secretary support for the committee. And then, of course, now that we're in virtual times, we had the additional task of figuring out how to do virtual meetings. So got all that down and continued that work. So maybe just in closing, this is just, I want to remind the committee, like, you've got some specific reasons why we do this, of course. And again, we just want to make sure that we're providing a good forum for you all to have discussion with one another and with the county as we're engaging in some of these countywide and regional issues. And so with that, I'll turn it back to you, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Stephen. I appreciate that. Any questions for Stephen? No? Okay. Moving to item 4B, as in Bravo, Statewide Transportation Improvement Program. Is Chris Ford here from ODOT?
Actually,
Yeah.
Vice Chair,
Yes.
we were so efficient that Chris Ford is not yet available. So Carly's team is ready to roll. If we want to swap items and have legislative first.
Let's swap it. Yeah,
would be
let's
great.
do it.
Jared has his hand up.
Okay, what's up, Counselor? How can I help you?
I just have a question. You know, historically, the Metro representative has not brought, you know, sort of updates and talking points like we do to MPAC. And I'm just wondering, there's 3 areas where if the committee would wish, you could bring updates. One would be the housing, the regional housing coordination policy study that's recently been adopted. Another one would be TOD, transportation oriented developments. And I suppose the third one would be the future vision. And maybe everybody on this committee feels fully informed on those, but I'd be happy to bring updates on those as appropriate if that's the desire of the committee.
Thoughts on that? Wanting updates? Mayor Beatty.
Think about it.
Yeah,
My
think about
only concern is I think it needs to be like really driven by the chair and the vice chair, because like I don't want to come to another meeting where I'm talked at by other governments. Like I'm pretty well knowledgeable. We have representation in all of those. And so like I'm open when it's like really critical, important, but you have the region's mayors group together to hear feedback from the mayors on issues in Washington County. And so I just these meetings already exist where we're getting told this information. So I'll leave it to the chair and vice chair to kind of go through it. But like I end up going to the same type of meeting like 8 times a month, and I'm full time. The rest of these mayors have other jobs. So I think we really need to be like considering like what kind of feedback we're getting. And I do think there's times where we need to hear from Metro. I just having it be an agenda item where we're getting feedback, like I that's going to be the beauty of this board is we hear from each other.
Thank you, Mary Beatty. And we also have a time for updates at the end of the meeting as well. So if there's ever, you know, in the future opportunities to do that, we could do that. And Counselor, I also serve on the Future Vision Commission. So if we ever need updates on that, I can provide that as well. Thank you, Mayor Beatty, for your statement. Any other thoughts on that before we move on? Okay. Counselor, thank you for your input, and feel free to put your hand down. We'll move to item 4C, the legislative session recap. So we have Carly here who's going to give us a briefing. Thanks for being here, Carly. And she's going to be joined by Andy Smith, who represents Hillsborough. And are we also going to have Jocelyn and Everett as well?
Jocelyn Blake with Beaverton should be on the line, as well as Everett Wild.
From Wilsonville.
Hi, Jocelyn with the City of Beaverton. And I also have our fellow here, for our YCLE fellow, Pao. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Pao from the Philippines. I am currently doing my fellowship program here in the City of Beaverton, and I'm excited to learn from this meeting.
Excellent. Well, welcome, Pao. Thanks for being here, and enjoy as you listen to the rest. All right, and then Everett. possibly?
Hello, yes, I'm sitting right next to my mayor here, Everett Wild, Government Relations
excellent.
for the City of Wilsonville.
Great. Okay, you're all here. Wonderful. Thanks for all being here. And Carly, take it away.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair Pace, members of the committee. Teresa, I believe we have some slides we can put up on the screen. For the record, my name is Carly Sylva-Gabrielson, one of the government relations managers for Washington County.
While we're waiting for the slides to come up, I'm Andy Smith, and like Mayor Pace said, I represent the city of Hillsborough.
Thank you, Andy.
Just to acknowledge that Mayor Gumbel just joined us, was able to join.
Thank you. Okay.
Wonderful. I can get us started.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair. Great. Thank you, Teresa. We can click through the next slide. So we have just completed the 2026 short session, which convened on February 2nd and adjourned on Friday, March 6th. Under the Oregon Constitution, the short sessions are limited to 35 days, so the legislature has a very compressed timeline to move legislation. This year, lawmakers introduced 304 bills. While the short sessions are generally intended to focus on budget adjustments, technical fixes, and policies that have already been vetted in previous years, this year the legislature took up a number of significant and sometimes controversial issues. So while the session was short, the days felt long, and it certainly was filled with a number of substantive policy debates. Next slide, please, Teresa. Thank you. Transportation was one of the major issues that the legislature grappled with this session. The Oregon Department of Transportation is facing roughly a $289 million budget gap for the current biennium, largely due to declining gas tax revenue and rising costs. So Senate Bill 1601 contains the legislature's solution to addressing that shortfall, which is relying on leaving approximately 100 positions unfilled at ODOT and redirecting about $108 million from planned projects to core road maintenance. Very importantly for cities and counties, the proposal does not change the 50-30-20 funding formula and does not impact the local bridge or fund exchange program. The trade-off, however, is that fewer projects will move forward and Oregonians may see reduced transportation services. And so many of us who work in the transportation space do hope that that does result in additional momentum going into the 27 session where we really need to address this issue long-term. Next slide, please. Wonderful. Alongside the funding conversation, the legislature also focused on oversight and operational improvements at ODOT. So Senate Bill 1544 requires the agency to report back to the legislature with the results of a performance audit required in 2025 and review its project delivery practices to identify those best practices. The bill also centralizes project delivery efforts and eliminates the statutory Joint Committee on Transportation. Next slide, please. This bill, House 4007, primarily deals with micromobility devices like e-bikes and scooters, specifically creating definitions in statute, setting helmet requirements for riders under 16, and clarifying local authority to regulate these devices. It also establishes a pilot program allowing for higher weight limits for trucks hauling fluid milk products. From a local government perspective, the main issue surrounding this bill arose in the committee process when amendments were proposed that would have redirected the state highway fund dollars from cities and counties to safe routes to schools. The -17 amendment specifically attempted to offset that redirection by removing the requirement that local revenue measures be voter approved. Those amendments ultimately were not adopted thanks to very strong engagement from local governments, many of your jurisdictions included. But the conversation surrounding the state highway fund allocation and local revenue will certainly continue this year and into the 2027 session. And we can click through the next slide, and I'm going to actually turn to my colleague Andy to cover this bill and the next one. Thanks, Andy.
Great, thanks, Carly. So Senate Bill 1586, the Oregon Jobs Act, as I'm sure you all know, Senator Solomon led the effort on that one. As introduced, it had a number of different parts, and it was pulled, the policies that went into it were pulled from other efforts that made recommendations on policy. For example, the Semiconductor Competitiveness Task Force, the Oregon Business and Industries their plan for growing the economy. And it was also designed to be a real public-private partnership. And for example, one of the first items that was in the bill was a new advanced manufacturing research and development tax credit. That was going to be paid for by state income taxes. That was going to be the state's partnership element of the bill, where they actually contributed funding into the economic development efforts. The local piece, which is really how the whole thing is done right now, was a couple parts. There was a new capital equipment local option property tax program for advanced manufacturers to buy down the cost of these very expensive pieces of equipment that are going into manufacturing facilities. And then there was, in the bill is introduced, some changes to the enterprise zone program to allow for a longer abatement period than is currently allowed in the standard program. And then finally, there was permitting reforms, which largely matched the next bill that we'll get to. And then the land piece, which as introduced, included bringing 1,700 gross acres in North Hillsborough into the UGB. So the bill was scaled back pretty early in session. Senator Solomon pulled out the enterprise zone piece due to some concerns around the school fee and how that was getting paid, and some other concerns that popped up from the building trades. She also scaled back the land piece, going from the 1,700 acres into the UGB to 373 acres into the UGB and putting the rest into urban reserves. And that followed some negotiations between the city of Hillsborough and Metro, and that brought Metro into a support position on the bill with that agreement. So obviously the bill did not pass. It had 3 public hearings. It never was brought up for a vote. And that's where it stands. And if you want to go to the next slide, I can cover the. And then House Bill 4084 was really the only other economic development bill that was introduced in the session. And it's notable because legislators were very concerned with economic development going into session. That became kind of the hot topic that everybody wanted to have a hand in. The state budget was in an unenviable position. The state economy was contracting and it was impacting state revenues. And that got the legislature's attention, and the governor's, because this is her bill. Her bill, as introduced, establishes the Joint Permitting Council, and just really intended to better coordinate between permitting agencies to make the process go faster. And it also created a fast track process for projects of certain sizes in different parts of the state. It modifies the E-zone criteria. It basically just makes it easier to establish an enterprise zone for a zone sponsor, and provides a little bit of extra time for the tax exemption piece if the zone sponsor wants to do it that way. And then because it included the enterprise zone program, in order to get the bill off the House floor, they had to amend it in Ways and Means to put a 1-year moratorium on the use of the enterprise zone program by data centers. And so they did that, and it passed.
This is why we can't have nice things.
But on 4084 and on 1586, data centers really kind of consumed all of the extra energy in the room, and it became about those facilities instead of the broader economic development issues that they were striving for. And I think I can leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Andy. Next slide. Oh, wonderful. So I also thought it'd be worth highlighting the key local government impacts from the Housing Omnibus Bill, House Bill 4037. This bill makes several changes aimed at streamlining housing development, including limiting certain notices and hearing requirements and restricting appeals on housing applications. It also updates some planning and land use provisions, expands certain building plan review exemptions, and creates a process for housing development on surplus state property. Finally, the bill does expand the Land Conservation and Development Commission's enforcement authority over local governments as the state continues to focus on accelerated housing production. So specifically, that's amending rules on governing urban reserve prioritization, which, as we all know, determines the lands that local governments must prioritize for future urban expansion. And at that, I'm going to pass it over to Jocelyn with City of Beaverton, and also Everett for a few additional bills and any closing thoughts. Thank you.
Hi, yeah, I'm happy to chime in. I just wanted to note, we figured it would be important to note House Bill 4177 was also passed through the House, which is the serial communications bill that we've been working on regarding the OGEC. So what this bill did was provide some exemptions to the serial communications definition under statute. And it really exempts when we're talking about factual information that's shared between counselors, or information that is the opinion of a constituent or staff, to not be considered a serial communication. And this was in regards to concerns under some of the OGEC training that had counselors feeling like they were at risk if they were speaking to staff in one-on-ones, or if a member of the media or if a constituent approached them in public, and if that constituent was then talking to other members of the body. This would really clarify that those are not serial communications and not under the definition of what deliberation means when you're deliberating on the dais. The other piece of this bill, the companion, is House Bill 4161, which we call it the hot dog bill, partially because of a decision that was made from the city of Beaverton. And it just clarifies that food and beverages can be given to elected officials as part of official meetings or events, and it is not required to be considered part of your compensation package and thus need to be a part of the agreement when you take office. It also allows for a certain level of swag, if you will, to be given to employees, but the swag is $100 or less, or a policy that is set forth by the local government. So it has that flexibility. So I just wanted to add those two, and I know I don't see Mayor Rose there, but he was a part of the work group and has been championing these causes as well.
And Mayor Risner's in DC right now at the National League of Cities, but yes, he has championed that, absolutely.
Wonderful. And if Ever doesn't have anything else to add, I realized I had promised that I would cover the transit lodging tax bill, which is House Bill 4148. So that bill specifically gives counties more flexibility with the transit lodging tax revenue. Previous statute required that 70% of the revenue was to be used for tourism promotion. And so this bill lowers that to 50%, allowing counties to have more discretion of using those funds for core services. That flexibility is very important given the challenging budget environment that all local governments are facing. And, you know, here at Washington County, we've had to make some very tough decisions recently, including cutting 10 patrol deputy positions and 18 positions at community corrections, including the entire victim services division. So, you know, I think the consensus in the legislature was that counties are very supportive of tourism and economic development and are looking for just that balance to maintain public safety and core services. So at that, we will close. Thank you so much, Vice Chair. Thanks for the opportunity. We'll take questions, of course.
Thank you, Carly. Any questions for this amazing team giving us a wrap up? Frank.
So on the TLT, is the 50-50 split only for counties or is it also for cities? Because cities have TLTs too. Because we were bound by the same restrictions as counties.
That is a great question. I do believe it is cities are included in that. Yes. I misspoke. That was not in my core portfolio. My colleague Pablo is at the helm. Thank you for that clarification. Sure. Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Okay. Any other questions for Carly or Andy or Jocelyn? Anyone else? Okay. Thank you so much for the briefing. Really appreciate it. All right. So we're going to move back to 4B, the STIP. And I'd like to invite Chris Ford, who is online. Is that correct? Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Hi. All right. And thank you so much for making adjustment to the schedule.
Absolutely.
Nice to see everybody. Some of you are very small on my screen. Some of you are bigger. And so if people raise their hand, you might want to identify yourself just so I know who's there. And sorry I could not join you in person today. So I am the Policy and Development manager for ODOT Region 1. Some of you have seen me before doing, frankly, a similar presentation of this a few years ago related to the last STIP, the 24-27 STIP, which is underway, which is an important, you heard me say 27, you see the word 27 up here. There's always an overlap here on the STIP. So I'm going to try to run through this presentation pretty quickly. There's 17 slides. Happy to have discussion and answer questions afterwards. So looking to not belabor the point, because the slides hopefully speak for themselves. I try not to talk to slides. The STIP, what is STIP? You know, I actually see this written out a lot of places, and the I and the P change a lot, but in short, it's Statewide Transportation Improvement Program. Every state has one. This is not an ODOT special thing. And so for those of you who worked in other states, you might be like, we need a STIP as well. And so it's really something that USDOT has in order to help very publicly, clearly say where are federal transportation dollars going. There are things in the STIP that are state funds, but it's usually because a project has got blended money on it. FHWA is Federal Highway Administration, FTA is Federal Transit Administration. Funds from those, whether they're grant awards or program funds, when they're on projects, show up in the STIP. Those are usually capital projects, construction projects. There's also active transportation projects and transit projects, but not everything's in there, like filling potholes and snow plows. Those aren't in there. State highway funds, particularly for something that isn't a major project, not in there. STIF, which is transit money, CO, that means Connect Oregon, not in there. So it's a lot of the things that ODOT does. It has some of the things that your local agencies do as well, but not everything. And so when there is going to be a new STIP, these are the typical stages that happen with the Oregon Transportation Commission, the OTC. A number of years ago now, in 2023, there was a decision around how to allocate out the anticipated federal formula funds. These are basically FHWA funds, and ODOT does a calculation and say, what's our state revenues going to be? As you've heard before, not as good as they used to be. Where are the federal dollars coming in, and where should those go? And then there are projects that get selected over a couple of years. They're identified. A lot of them are from a data-driven system and proposed. And then I'll go more into where those come from. And then what we are in right now is a public review process, an opportunity for public comment. And then the Transportation Commission will approve the STIP this summer. We typically, as ODOT, have funding categories that are kind of broad-based, and we say like, hey, roughly this much money should go into this. I'm not going to read the words on the screen, but a lot of you have either heard these terms before, or you know, you're like, yeah, we do things like that as well. Fix it being like the big one, and that is essentially state of good repair asset conditions, paving, bridges, culverts, operations, new signals, or fixing old signals, things like that. And there's other categories as well. And so I'll flip to the next slide. And when the OTC allocated out the anticipated funding, it always comes up with slightly different categories, but the typical ones are fix it, public and active transportation. ADA is specifically relates to the Americans with Disabilities Act, curb ramp remediation settlement, funds that go to local, safety, et cetera. What this table shows is a comparison of the current STIP, the one in the middle, the one before that, all the way on the left, and then the proposed allocation for the upcoming STIP, which allocates all the funds out through 2030. I will note the years on this are federal fiscal year. So for instance, the 2027 federal fiscal year actually starts on October 1st, 2026. And as you can see, the amount of money in the STIP has gone down over time. As inflation has gone up, as we have more people, yet we have less money in the STIP to allocate out to projects. And in particular, some of these programs have taken bigger hits than others. Fix It in particular, kind of state of good repair things, a 40% drop in funding. We've had to put more funds into ADA curb ramp remediation, but put less money into a number of things. And in fact, there's no money in the Enhanced program, and that's typically the program that ODOT has to build new things, new freeways, new lanes, also used to be called MOD or modernization. And so back in 2023, ODOT staff went to the OTC and said, well, we've kind of done a calculation here to figure out either what promises have we made or what are minimal levels of funding to maintain things. And actually in every category, we're saying this is the minimum amount of money to put into it. And ultimately, that allocates out everything except $70.5 million. And I'll talk a little bit more about that, which is a proposed Great Streets program. And so ultimately, this is just what needs to be in there. It's a lot of money. I mean, I'm looking at something that looks like almost $3 billion, and yet it's something also close to a bare minimum. So what's the outcome of that? What does that mean? So I think I've come to this group before and said things such as there is no funding at this time for paving anything other than interstates, and that's only to keep them at the fair level that is required by FHWA. That means any US highway, that means any state highway. There's no paving money specifically available for that. Less money to put into bridges, and well, even less money after the legislative session. And then we're unable to try to achieve things we want to do, like keep things in a better state of good repair, address gaps in active transportation. There's just not funding available at this time. And so you just heard a conversation about the legislative session. That was about operating money for ODOT to operate and maintain, fill potholes, plow roads. This is capital money, also in minimal supply. So where do the projects come from? And so they come from data systems where we look at our asset conditions, but they also come from agreements we've made and also plans and studies. And I could belabor this. I always forget that I have this slide in here. There are a lot of plans and studies. ODOT does operate differently than an agency, like a local city or a county, where you say, well, what are your plans? Well, we have a lot of different types of things depending on our assets and our facilities. Road safety audits, which actually spurred one of the investments that you'll see out in Cornelius. We have a new thing called corridor investment strategies that has looked into a segment of a ODOT facility to identify safety and operations investments. ATM is active traffic management, those signs that you see on the freeway where we've identified locations to put more of those to inform people about road conditions. And there's a whole list of things here. And we actually spend a lot of time looking at Metro's regional transportation plan. We look at county and city TSPs. And there's also, like, City of Portland has a Park Rose community plan, which helped guide us on identifying safety and operations investments on US 30 bypass on Northeast Sandy and East Portland. So there's a lot of different things that we use in plans and studies, but we do use data a lot to just figure out where we need to do paving, where we need to work on bridges. I did mention there was $70 million left over or unallocated from the allocation. There's a proposal for a Great Streets 2.0. And the idea is that in many places, there are multiple needs in one location. There may be a safety need and a paving need and an active transportation need. And so ODOT leadership asked the regions to help identify these locations where a lot of these needs could come together in one place. In particular, what they said is, we want these to be based on a safety project from our ARTS program, All Roads Transportation Safety, or an ADA curb ramp program. And so we actually have two of those identified in Region 1, and one is in Washington County. So one thing I did want to touch on before I get into the proposed projects for the draft 2730 STIP is this change that is happening and coming up. And for those of you who sit on the various area commissions on transportation, you've already been exposed to this, and ODOT is moving to also incorporate, not to replace the STIP, to incorporate a 10-year capital investment plan, the CIP. So there was a strategic review undertaken a few years ago by the former ODOT director, and among other things, they identified that one issue was that ODOT kind of uses the STIP to plan, but that's not a very long time frame. That's 3 or 4 years, depending on how you count it, and that ultimately having a 10-year view of the investments that we're going to make, whether they're programmatic or specific, will really help prepare everybody more for those investments. It will help us better track. It gives us an opportunity to develop projects in partnership with groups like the ACT and local agencies, and it also allows us to, over time, better develop more accurate cost estimates for constructing projects. We are in the process now of identifying the first CIP, with the idea being that it will be adopted in December of this year. And so we're working with the ACTS to identify possible projects for the CIP. And so the STIP itself is going to cover the first 4 years. So what's going to go into the 27 to 30 STIP is years 1, 2, 3, 4. But then the question will be, well, what's going to be funded in 2031 through 2037? And so that's an effort underway right now. There's still a lot of work to be done to even identify the projects. It's going to be a fiscally constrained effort. So it's not just a wish list. And so how much funding will be available for those later years, we don't yet know. And that's a big part of the process. The whole idea with the CIP is it will be updated every year. Eventually, we'll start to get into that into, we think, 2029. And that means there will actually be a new STIP adopted every year. The STIP, everything in the STIP will come from the CIP. This idea, the CIP will be the planning document. We're going to shift to the STIP ultimately just really being the federally required accounting document. So that's a big shift, but ultimately things aren't changing a lot. We're still going to identify projects. We're still going to work with local agencies and other organizations to identify efforts and opportunities. And so it's simply, we're going to have a longer horizon on that process. And I'm a planner is my own background. And so I'm actually pretty excited about that. So getting back to the 27 to 30 STIP, we're also handling it differently as part of our shift to the CIP process. Right now, ODOT is only identifying federal fiscal year 2027 phases. They're only design phases at this point. So we're not trying to program PE, that means preliminary engineering, right-of-way, utility relocation, and construction all at once. That's typically what we do. We say, hey, here's all the money for all the phases, and off we go. And what that tends to lead us to is situations where by the time the construction phase rolls around, we now know a lot more about what a project costs, but it's hard to add money to a project when you don't have a lot of money to begin with. So the idea being, we're going to start with the design phase. That's where we really nail in the scope of a project, the schedule of the project, and the cost of a project. And so that will allow us to allocate out remaining funds for constructing those phases. And our goal, I don't want to go so far as to say commitment, but our very strong goal is for everything receiving design funding in 2027 is to get those constructed during the lifetime of the 27 to 30 STIP. So not this summer, but next summer or spring, we will also say, hey, these are the phases that we're looking to add in 2028. Some of those will be new projects. So statewide, there's 76 new projects. You can say that's a lot or a little that are going to be added to the STIP in 2027. And then there will be, over the subsequent few years, 24 new projects across the state. So there'll be a few in Region 1, a few in each region. But what that does mean is not all, but most of the projects that we expect to design and construct during this time frame are showing up in the 2027 time frame. So I say this is within the Metro MPA. That's a metropolitan planning area. So it's a little bit like the urban growth boundary. It's a little bit like the metro boundary, but it's the planning area that projects in this also end up in the MTIP for those of you who get into that realm. And so there are a grand total of 6 new ODOT projects coming online in 2027. Again, these are all design money. 2 of these are safety projects. 2 of them are Great Streets projects. Those also have a safety component. They're actually arts projects. And we have 2 operation projects, and that's it. There's no paving projects. There's no culvert projects. And in fact, there's 7 new ODOT projects in all of Region 1. So the only one missing here is a bridge that is out in Hood River County. That's not part of the Metro MPA. Interestingly enough, as you know, ODOT has quite a few grant programs. We have local bridge programs. Half of our art safety money goes to local agencies, and then we have other programs like Oregon Community Paths. So there's actually 13 new local agency projects that will be coming in the 27 STIP. 6 of those are safety projects, 6 of them are community paths projects, and then there's a local bridge project. And here they are. And so the first category here says arts. These are a mix of the ODOT and local projects. The 2 above the line are ODOT projects, and all the ones below are local projects. So one of the 2 arts projects in the region is in Washington County. I have an asterisk on that, and it's a systemic arts project. It's going to do lighting, signal, signage, other kind of good, important investments to help safety throughout and along highways 10 and 8. You can see Washington County and Beaverton are both receiving funds also through our local arts program to make safety investments in their cities. I think on those projects, I think ODOT pays 90% of the cost. And then we have two Great Streets projects. One of those is on Highway 8. I have a whole slide on that in a moment, so I won't go more into that right here. And then these are the rest of the projects. In terms of operations projects, we're replacing the second oldest signal in Region 1 out of Northeast Sandy. And then we're actually just replacing some ITS's, Intelligent Transportation Systems. That's another version of ATM. It's the signage on the freeways. That's simply fixing and replacing old facilities. And then there's a number of community path projects. Those are all local projects. Congratulations to Tigard and Wilsonville, among others, and getting funding for that program. And then Multnomah County is getting a local bridge funding. All of these are design phase funds. So if you were to say, hey, is really that signal out on Northeast Sandy and 162nd, is it really just $1.3 million? No, that's the design funding towards that effort. There will be more funding for other phases once the cost gets dialed in, and those would come forth in subsequent years. I said I would speak more, and I'm almost done my presentation here, about the Great Streets project out on TV Highway. And so we identified a number of safety and active transportation investments out in this area, and these are meant to be in support of TriMet's proposed TV Highway bus rapid transit project. East Cornelius is a rapidly urbanizing area, and a number of years ago, about 5 years ago, ODOT commissioned a road safety audit to look at what we can do to make things safer out there for vulnerable users as well as drivers, because there were a number of safety issues. And so we've been bit by bit installing things like rapid flashing beacons and other handling maintenance issues out there in order to make a safer stretch of Highway 8. And so this comes from that. We're looking to, because it's still draft, install a crosswalk with the flashing lights. We call them RRFBs. I think it's rectangular rapid flashing beacons. And then build a section of sidewalk infill. And that is meant to help support people accessing the new BRT and as well as the existing transit lines. I don't have a specific location for you because we're working with TriMet to identify the specific location. I think the options are 334th or 338th Avenue, wherever they're going to actually put the BRT stop. But those were investments that were also identified by the road safety audit. Also included in this is an arts project that will add another rapid flashing beacon within Hillsborough. And there will also be leading pedestrian intervals installed at a few locations throughout this area, including in Hillsborough, unincorporated Washington County, and even into Beaverton. And so that's what that Great Streets project is, a collection of really safety and transit supportive projects around access. So as it relates to the draft STIP, I'm almost done here. ODOT's been holding an online open house, started on February 3rd. It's still open for the rest of this week till March 20th. And it's somewhere you can get more information and you can submit comments. The comments get sent to ODOT statewide as well as to regions as appropriate. And then the next steps after that is based on the comments that are received. ODOT staff do review the draft STIP, look to make adjustments, and then the OTC in June or July will approve the STIP. FHWA and FTA approve it in September, and October 1st is the start of the new STIP. So the public comment period actually extends to the end of this month. The online open house will close down, but online comments can still be submitted. So there's a link here with the URL. Oh, I don't want to open it right now though. To go to oregon.gov/ODOT/STIP in order to go to the online open house to this week. And comments can also be emailed to odot.stip@odot.oregon.gov. So if you have any comments or questions on the STIP, they can be submitted that way, or you can ask me some right now. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions for Chris from ODOT? Anyone online? Searching. Oh, we had a question?
Yes, Chair.
Go for it.
Hey, Chris, the educational opportunity, I've got something in my JPAC update about an MTIP project, but it's got an ODOT key number on that. Can you talk to me a little bit about how that ties together or what that might mean?
Well, not without seeing it in front of me, I will make a guess. So everything that goes into the MTIP, that is the Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, It also shows up in the STIP, and we work all the time with Metro. Whenever something needs federal money and it's within the Metro area, we work, and sometimes the OTC moves first, or sometimes Metro moves first. They'll end up being one and the same in the MTIP and the STIP. And as a result, when something needs to show up in the MTIP, it will be assigned also an ODOT STIP number. It'll be in both of those.
Okay, so is this a good place to bring up our concern with this number, or just wait till we talk to our friends at JPAC?
I would say, earlier is always better. There's never too soon.
Yeah. Go for it.
Okay, so we found, as the staff was briefing me and we're digging through looking at opportunities, we found in the draft 2730 MTIP on page 81, 4.4 million for bus electrification items. That's their item number 71329. It's ODOT key 23178, 58 40-foot electric buses for the Tri-County. The reason I bring this up is because we just had our TV Highway meeting where they told us we won't be getting electric buses for TV Highway because the Merlot Garage can't support them. So, and I'm not familiar with electric buses in Clackamas County, but I'll be asking them about it. So we've got this line item described as Tri-County electric buses, but the only place for electric buses in TriMet is Portland. So little concern about truth in advertising for a line item.
Good catch, Jeff.
Now, I'll give that to the staff. They were reading line by line through the thing.
That's great. No one does that, or apparently somebody does do that. Oh my gosh, it's so much stuff. There's so much information, isn't there? I get to read these big old packets. That's a good question. I don't know the answer to it because that is a great example of, that's actually a TriMet project. It's going to show up in the MTIP. It's going to show up in the STIP. It's a TriMet money. It's federal money, so it's going to be, even though it's a TriMet project, it shows up in there. But I don't know the specifics of that. I think it's a great question to ask at JPAC. And I don't know off the top of my head, or I would provide the answer.
Appreciate it, Chris. Thanks for entertaining it. And we've broke the seal on that question now. So thank you.
I mean, that's why these things go to public committees and where there's conversation. I mean, that's the whole purpose of the STIP. It creates a lot of process, but it's to say like, hey, how is money being spent? We want to make sure that we understand. And so I think that's a great use of that time.
Thanks, Chris, and great question. Any other questions for Chris in the room or online? Going once, going twice.
Mayor, I don't have a question, but I do want to say thank you, Chris, for your presentation. And I live in the unincorporated areas of Washington County, and the increase in the ADA funding, we feel it because we see it. So thank you.
I'm really glad. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's really important to do. And it's we've had a lot of questions around that. And it's clearly the right thing to do. And it's a great investment to make sure that everybody can get to where they need to go.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Fye, for that comment. Any other questions for Chris? Okay. Chris, thank you for being here today. I appreciate it. I know ODOT is going through a lot right now. And I appreciate you working through all that and being here and bringing a great attitude and letting us know what's going on with the STIP. Thanks so much.
I appreciate being invited. Thank you.
Sure thing. Okay, moving on to item 5, regional committee updates. I'd like to introduce Mayor Delane, Mayor Bubenik, and Commissioner Fye to provide an overview on the JPAC agenda from just March 19th, right? Just last week.
Bring your cupcakes. It's my birthday that day. So first up by the chair will be an annual compliance report. We've had some discussions and feedback on that. As far as I think one of them that keeps coming up around the compliance report is representation by transportation organizations other than TriMet. So if you guys have any feedback on that, right now the water I've been carrying on that is maybe the smaller orgs should also get a seat at the table so that they can provide some direct feedback rather than trying to leverage filtering that through TriMet. So that's a common topic that's coming up. Minutes, transit minute will be the normal interesting items. Folks that have watched the Transit Minute know we're still struggling. We're still substantially below pre-COVID ridership, even on our beloved TV highway line. Consent agenda, the big one on the consent agenda is the cancellation of 2 Portland projects. They didn't get their federal funding, so 2 of them are getting pulled off there. Then a consideration of the meeting minutes from February, and then the one I just brought up that kind of is the blister on section 5.1, the Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program. That's where I'll bring up that question again about 4.4 million for electrified buses being called Tri-County when it's actually only one county that has electrified buses. So if nothing else, at least maybe we can get that thing renamed appropriately. There are multiple items to discuss on that. If you guys have read through it or had your staff look through it and have any feedback, I'm open to feedback on the the Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program public review process. Also, then there's an interstate bridge program update. Maybe we'll get an update on the latest and greatest pricing estimate. That's kind of the, yeah, team's been reformed.
Whole new team.
Yeah, so they get a chance. And then everybody will, I'm sure, dial in, listen, and watch the tape for the state legislative session recap. After we got such a great one here, we'll get the Metro take on that with some of the same, Carly will be there. So some of the same people providing that. And then the regional transportation work plan scoping kickoff will be our final agenda item. Questions, comments, concerns?
Any questions online? Okay, thank you so much for the briefing. I appreciate it. Please, yeah, Stephen.
Just before we leave that RTP update amendment, I would just encourage everybody to stay really plugged in. That's a really important process. It comes around every 4 years, 5 years. Thank you. Yeah, so it's a big deal, and it's something that we'll all want to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and I think part of that is the how, right? How do we get there on this one? Because one of the things we've always, you guys have heard me talk about this every time, is reasonable regional diversity of the funds. Because I've been sitting at this table, I was talking with Mayor Bubenik earlier, and I was like, sometime after 2003, I got seated here when I got on council. I don't know if it was 04 or 05, but it's been a while. We've continued to be a donator to Multnomah County. And we just, it's good. We've seen some things happen recently where we got close to our population share, but I think that's an ongoing fight to make sure that we get that equity, right? I mean, there's good projects everywhere. No, there's no shortage of good projects. Nobody's building bridges to nowhere, but I think we need to continue to look for that, you know, a little money for Clackamas and some money for us, not just 80%. That's the one that really makes it sting, is when you see 80% go to Multnomah County, and we're 33% of the population. And if you look at the numbers, we're probably sitting pretty close to the capital of the state's economic engine. So if it's tax dollars, that equation probably should be flipping. So that's part of what I continue to struggle and argue for in the disbursement of funds. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for always championing switching that and changing that. So I don't want to say championing that issue, you know, championing the fact that it should be changed. Okay, moving to MPAC. MPAC meeting will be on March 25th. The agenda is not out for review yet, but did you want to make any comments on MPAC?
I didn't do my homework, teacher.
Okay. No worries. All right.
I just thought Tim might be here, and then I didn't do my homework. So
no,
sorry.
It's all good. And Tim's in DC, so and my person on Impact is also in DC. So yeah. Oh, and it's canceled.
Yeah, we found out it got canceled due to spring break.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's true.
So the dog ate my homework.
You got a
and the
reprieve,
meeting.
yeah.
And a meeting. Yeah, it's a reason to have kids. All right, there you go. All right. Moving to item C, R1 Act, which will meet again on April 6th. Agenda is not available yet, but we have Mayor Bubenik, Mayor Hu, Mayor Wenzel is not here today, but do either of you have anything to add for that?
Just say Chris hit the highlights. We're spending most of the time discussing the projects that should be part of the CIP. The top 5 have been approved by the R1 Act for our region, but we're allowed an additional 10, possibly up to 10. And there's a debate about, do we just focus on the 5? Do we submit all 10? So we're going to have to hash that out in April. And then when we are going to look and evaluate at these 10 projects that cover, Hood River, Clackamas County, Washington County, Multnomah County, how are we going to evaluate them? Some of the ideas is to use what OTC does, and that's they use weighted goals. And I thought this was interesting. 30% is looked at in terms of safety. 27% of our project should be state of repair. 15% mobility, 10% sustainability, and 10% equity? Or do we look at geographic balance, urban versus rural, and or urgency? So what we're going to be dealing with in the April meeting is, one, the discussion of, do we submit additional projects at all and just say, hey, here's our 5 for the region? Or, okay, if we are going to submit the 10, to hash that out between multiple jurisdictions in a very large act. How are you going to whittle it down to 10 on an agreeable scale? This is going to be an interesting meeting, considering it's done virtually. So it's in my mind, it's hard to control for Commissioner Salas because you have all these different opinions. But they are looking at having 3 meetings a year in person, probably in the spring and summer. Of course, they'll still allow a hybrid, but they're going to have a goal of us at least on the meatier, tougher discussions. And I don't think this one's going to be in time of having to do this in person. Okay. And Mayor, did I miss anything?
That's good. And in addition to the 5 already on the table, ODOT present additional project, and as well as Clackamas County and Hood River County, and the PAC made a motion not to consider additional project, and it was approved. So we won't be consider additional project.
Yeah, that makes sense at this point right now.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Moving to item D, the NW Act will meet on April 9th. Mayor Kirk, did you want to make any comments?
Yes, really quick. Washington County and Tillamook County met in a Zoom and kind of went over what we're going to put forward. There's obviously still Columbia County, Clatsop County, and Tillamook County that they still have to come up with their list. Again, like R1, we're probably going to go more for the 5 versus the 10. Now, Tillamook County and Washington County have decided that they're going to make the biggest push on Highway 6, obviously. The ones I am assuming for Tillamook and Clatsop and Columbia are going to be probably 101 and Highway 30, because all of those have issues. In regards to Washington County, the second one that we're going to put in that snowball's chance is going to go through, but we're going to see what we can do, is to get a couple million for a feasibility study for Highway 6, basically running from North Plains to the Highway 47 Staley's Junction cut up to Vernonia. Try to find out why it becomes a parking lot. And also, there's a lot of traffic accidents along there that aren't necessarily realized by ODOT traffic accident information. So we're going to try to, as in the Northwest Act, myself and Don Odermont are going to try to get information together, can sort of start a side project to ramp up for that, and find out where the accidents are and stuff are occurring, but hopefully promote that. So basically our whole region will have a better way, safer way, and also faster way to get to the coast, since both of them are pretty much compromised. A really quick note that you guys probably don't really care about, but luckily Our state representative, Darcy Edwards, was able to get additional $173,000 to finish a project. If you have driven through Manning right before you get to Dairy Queen, there's that newer fire station off to the side. We've been fighting for about 7 years to get a light there. We actually fought 3 years before they built it, because nobody pays attention to the lights and siren on 26, let alone when they're parked. So luckily, there's going to be a traffic light there, hopefully before the end of the year.
That's great news, actually, and I know exactly what fire station you're talking about.
Yes, and none of that money came from ODOT.
There you go. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mayor
Thank
Kirk,
you.
for your update on the Northwest Act. We really appreciate it. Moving to item 6, other business and agency updates. Do we have any county or city updates? Anybody want to update us on what's going on? Looking online, looking in the room, nothing is happening anywhere in our region. Is that what I get? Okay. Any suggestions for future agenda topics? Mayor Beatty.
I'm sure, like you guys, I'm concerned with the cut to safe routes to school. I know that it's being hailed as a temporary budget measure, but it would be good for us to get an update on what does that mean for projects in the pipeline and what does that mean for grants going forward. All of us rely on that funding, and with the weather changing, kids are going to be walking more, and so I think it's going to become more noticeable.
And thanks for bringing that up, Mayor Beatty. We can put that down. I think it'll be especially apparent when we go back to school in the fall without that funding. All right, any other topics that we want to bring up? Okay, great. Well, it's we're going to wrap up, and thank you so much for all of you being online and in person. For the people in person, you get a bonus. We'll adjourn this meeting and reconvene at the Backwoods Brewery at their corner of 2nd and Main for a no-host social time, so we can spend a little bit more time talking together and complaining about what's going on. I'll just call it. For those of you not with us, you can drive over. There's plenty of time to drive over to Backwoods Brewing. They have great onion rings. That is the singular reason you should go, in addition to meeting with all of us. But if you can't make it, we totally understand. If you have any other ideas for future topics, of course, let us know. Let me or Mayor Rosner know, and we'll get them on the agenda. And we are adjourned. Thanks so much, everyone.
Meeting over early. What?